Back in the days when I didn't have savings, every expense felt like crisis. A small problem like a car repair or a sudden bill could completely throw me off. Not because the problem was huge, but because I didn't have no financial buffer to back me up. And that's exactly what I want to talk with you about today. What an emergency fund actually is, how much you really need, and how I'm approaching it from my current situation. I'm sure you're gonna be able to take key takeaways out of it. Quick note, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm just a guy on YouTube that researched this topic, and let's get straight to the video. Now, what is an emergency fund? An emergency fund is basically money set aside specifically for unexpected situations. Now, going on vacation is not an unexpected situation. I know for some of you is, but believe me, that's not the idea behind the emergency fund. The goal is simple: to avoid going into debt when something goes wrong. According to the Customer Financial Protection Bureau, having even a small emergency fund can help reduce financial stress and reliance on high interest debt. Most financial guidelines, especially in the United States, recommend between 3 to 6 months of expenses saved. About 24% in the United States doesn't have an emergency fund at all, and 24% might not sound as a lot, but when you calculate all the data, you actually can see that across all generations, it's 69 million people that doesn't have enough savings to cover an emergency situation, and they gotta go to debt in order to get themselves out of it. So there is a big gap between what's recommended and what people can actually do. So if you're in this situation, that's important because it means that you are not alone. If you currently have consumer debt, your priority shouldn't be building a large emergency fund right away. A common recommendation, including from many financial frameworks from the United States, is to start with a small buffer of $1,000. This doesn't mean that you are fully protected. This is just there to prevent you getting deeper into debt while you are focusing on paying off what you own. Once your debt is under control, then you can move to the next step, to building a full emergency fund. This is where the 3 to 6 months of expenses guideline comes in. The idea is simple. When your income stops, you still can cover your essential expenses without getting into debt or using credit. So how do you calculate how much you need for your emergency fund? To calculate your emergency funds, start with your essential expenses like housing, utility, transportation, and food. Focus on what you need, what you really need, and not everything you spend. For example, if your monthly expenses are $5,000, then you need between $15,000 to $30,000 in savings in order for you to have this cushion that you can rely on in case something happens. According to analysis referenced by Investopedia, a typical US household emergency fund for 6 months can reach up to $30,000 or more depending on lifestyle. I use a spreadsheet to calculate all my expenses, and if you want this spreadsheet, you can easily download it for free from the description below. So how can you decide between 3 to 6 months? What should you choose? A simple way to think about it is move closer to 6 months if your income is unstable. You got some other people that are relying on your income. Move closer to 3 months if your income is stable and you have less financial responsibilities, like you live with your parents and you actually got a good income, then you don't really need so much money that you have to put aside. So you really can see that it's not about rules, it's about managing the risk. I just recently moved countries. I moved from the United States. I've got a newborn and my income isn't stable yet. So building a 6 months emergency fund immediately isn't realistic for me. So instead, I'm gonna focus on building a smaller buffer at the beginning, covering essential expenses and gradually increasing it over time. This also feels like something more practical and less overwhelming when you just start. Now the question is, where do you keep this money? Is it in your glove box? Your emergency fund should be kept somewhere safe but easily accessible. Something like a saving account, money market account, or a high-yield saving account. The key idea is the liquidity. The money should be easily accessible when you need it. According to the guidance from the Customer Financial Protection Bureau. Emergency funds should prioritize accessibility over return. The big question is when to use the money, because everything can be categorized as an emergency. So you gotta label it right, because then your emergency money could be spent on something that you might regret afterwards. The key takeaway to understand here is that the emergency fund isn't about perfection, it's about creating stability. Even a small amount of money saved can change how you deal with financial stress. If you want to build an emergency fund, here are the step-by-step process that you can follow in order to achieve some clarity about your finances and how much you actually need to save in order to have a little bit more peace of mind when life throws at you a curveball. Number one, you got to track all your monthly expenses. You need to know how much you spend each and every month and what exactly you're paying for. Second step, you got to open a saving account dedicated for emergencies. Automate small transactions, $50 to $100, just to make sure that something is going towards this goal each and every month. Adjust your goal depending on your particular situation. If you can save more, do that every week. If you cannot save more, do that every month. But make sure making a plan depending on your current situation. And last but not least, remember, consistency beats size. Even if you start small, if you do it over a period of time, that will make sure that even if something happens when you are not fully prepared, at least you have a little bit more peace of mind when it happens. If you're building your emergency funds right now, start with what feels realistic for you in this specific situation. And again, this is my personal approach based on the research and my personal experience. And I'd love to know down in the comments, tell me what was your last unexpected expense that you had to deal with. I'm going to document my journey to understand better the financial world and how it works. And you are invited to join me on this journey. Hopefully, we both can learn something new.